Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I have for you a very special book today. Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces. This is the book. I have shadow on my face. This is the book that supposedly inspired the story of the original Star Wars trilogy. Yep, this is it, right here. It's not a book on story structure. In fact, it's hard for me to define exactly what this is. This book is a book essentially on mythology and how mythologies fit together. It is a theory. It is something of a poorly defined theory, and in my opinion, this is a pretty bad book. It may be that I was reading it in some pretty bad conditions as well. I was out there in the cold reading with a nightlight because I read this at work, but I have to say, this book, first of all, if you're a religious person, you're probably not going to enjoy this book because it says things like Buddha and Jesus are just myths. And some people will find that offensive. I do not personally find that offensive, I'm going to be honest with you, but some people do. So I have to premise it out there. But the big problem I have with this book is that it is not well dedicated to what it's supposed to be. A good textbook should basically have a first chapter that gives you the gist of what the book is about, mentions the major themes, and gives you a basic understanding, and then supports that with the following chapters, rather like an essay. This book, it doesn't do that. There's no one chapter that says these are the common themes in myth, and here they all are, and here's the whole thing in a nutshell, explain, simplify, done. No. What this also does not do is it poorly separates the mythology from him talking about the mythology. So, yes, there's a lot of footnotes in here, there's a lot of myths in here. If you enjoy mythology, you may enjoy this book just because you're reading about mythology. There are a lot of really cool little stories in here that you're reading about and finding things and just enhancing your understanding of mythology. But the thing is, I did not read this to enhance my understanding of mythology. I read it to enhance my understanding of story structure. And this book did not do that for me. It was really hard for me to pick out the things that were important. I mean, I remember there was one section that talked about the advising wizard or whatever it was, and that obviously was where Obi-Wan Kenobi came from. Like, as soon as I read that, I was like, Obi-Wan Kenobi, okay. So, here's the thing about this book. If you are a writing geek, you're going to hear about this book. If you're early on in your career and you're hoping to get a quick feel for what you should writing so you could work tonight, this is not the book for you. I would never recommend you buy this book unless it is a textbook in a class. If it's not a textbook in a class, you're probably going to get a better understanding of this book by reading the books that have been written after this book, using this book. I actually will be keeping this around because I know I have a number of books that reference this book. So I'm going to be reading this, or I'm going to be looking at those references and going back to this book in the future. But despite the fact that this is a very famous book, I cannot recommend it. I found it to be a laborious read, and I really didn't enjoy it. Anyway, that's my opinion. I'm Richard Neal.